Philadelphia, get ready to be inspired. If you need help finding the light in the darkness, don't touch that dial. Let's navigate life through the lens of hope with Scotty P. Inspirational speaker Scotty P speaks the importance of mental health in society and encourages techniques to overcome the everyday mental health obstacles that hold us back in life. It's not just inspiration, it's Scotty P inspiration.
Good evening, Philadelphia and the surrounding counties. Thank you again for tuning into another episode of the Scotty P Inspiration Show. I want to thank you all so much for being here today and for starting your weekend with me, Scott Prendergast, your host, aka Scotty P. So, on this September Friday, there's a lot of good stuff going on for those who are just going back to school, whether it's college, high school, getting started. Maybe you're going back to work after the Labor Day weekend. A lot of really good stuff, important stuff, and exciting things coming in everybody's future as we get started with the fall season. Now, for those of you who are unaware, let me just give you a little bit of background real quick. As I told you, my name is Scott Prendergast, aka Scotty P. I'm your host. This is my show. And a shout out to the WWDB Studios for allowing me to record here. They are the ones who make this all possible. So if you want to watch previous episodes, you can check out the Scotty P Inspiration Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and you can also go on YouTube under Scotty P Inspiration and watch the episodes live that way as well. And last but not least, you could go on www.dbam.com. You can check it out that way too. So everybody, real quick, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for being here today. I want to talk about something that's super important. Now, what I want to talk about today is Suicide Prevention Week. Now, Suicide Prevention Week has been this whole week, where actually it ends on the 10th, but this whole month is something that is really kind of being talked about, okay? Now, here at Scotty P Inspiration, we don't shy away from any topics, especially when we're talking about suicide, because I want to help people to navigate life through the lens of hope, as my tagline is, and I want to help people to understand that suicide is something that is preventable and it's something that we can talk about. And if you're having these feelings, you don't have to feel like you have to keep it inside. So before we get started with what we're going to kind of explain more on that today, I want to give a couple facts about suicide that have been recorded over the past few years. Now, some of these facts are admittedly a little bit alarming. So the first fact I want to give you all is this. So last year in the United States, there was over 46,000 people who died by suicide. Now, that is more than the number of homicides in the entire country. 46,000 people took their own lives. Some other facts about it as well here. That means that it's about one death by suicide every 11 minutes. Every 11 minutes. Think about that. Every 11 minutes, somebody is taking their own life in this country. And suicide here, another fact as we roll down here, is the leading cause of death for ages 12 to 35. Leading cause of death behind car accidents. Oh my. So there's... And one more fact here before we get going. Untreated depression is the most common cause. We know that. But the fact here that I think is the most alarming, that I really want us to hear, is that there are 1 million attempts per year. 1 million attempts of suicide, of people taking their own lives per year. 1 million attempts. Now, I didn't share these facts with you. I didn't share these things to be a downer. I didn't share these things as a way to say, oh, what is this trying to talk about? I'm sharing these because we need to realize that this is something that is running rampant in our society. This is something that is hurting the ones that we love. This is people, we are losing people to this, and we need to know why. And we need to understand that these facts they're real. This is not made up stuff. Okay, and so with Suicide Prevention Week, the whole idea of it and why we do this, why we have this week, is because we want to make sure that we let people know that it's okay to talk about it. Because there have been so many situations. I know a few people who have attempted to take their own life, who have survived, thankfully. And they always said that one of the first things about it was that they felt like they couldn't talk to anybody about the feelings in which they were bringing up, about the feelings in which they were having. You know, that suffering in silence is something that we see all too common. Now, that reasons behind that is different for everyone. For some people, it's that stigma of being a certain gender. For other people, it's feeling like you have to have yourself all together and they don't want to show that weakness. Or other people just aren't comfortable talking to others. It's different for everybody. However, that suffering in silence doesn't need to happen. And that's why we have Suicide Prevention Week and why we talk about this and we bring it to light so that people can understand that it is okay to talk about these things. Now, with some of the facts that I shared here, I think the logical question that I would have and that a lot of people have is why? Why is this happening at such a high rate? Why have the rates increased by over 30% in recent years? What is going on that is really allowing this to become such a prevalent thing in our society? Now, I could have a whole show just talked about that, about all the different things, but I want to kind of break it down in the traditional Scotty P way. The first thing that we have to understand is that many times, however, hear me when I say this, not all the time, but many times, there is a mental health disorder involved in this. A lot of times, as I said, suicide is caused by untreated depression. And not treating depression over time can lead to this. Or extreme anxiety over time, which then leads to depression, can also lead to thoughts of suicide ideation. So a lot of times there are mental health issues and disorders that are kind of behind the scenes that are causing some of this stuff and adding to it. However, that is not always the case. But it is important to understand that mental health disorders, when left untreated, can lead to even more serious things, such as contemplating one's taking their own life. And that's why it is so incredibly important for us to spread awareness about mental health so that we can realize, hey, you're not alone. Hey, it's okay to share these feelings. Hey, there is help available for you. And that help looks a little bit different for everybody. For some people, that help means going to therapy. For others, it's medication. For some, it's a combination of both. For others, maybe it's an alternative route. It's different for everybody. No two are exactly the same. However, you have to make sure you're finding something that works for you. Because the process is different for everybody, but the same thing remains is that we do need to address it. Okay, that is what is so incredibly important for us to do. Now, sticking with this thread here of why, I think the next thing that I've found that I've seen with people I've talked to and me just being in the mental health field for the past 5 years, a lot of these times I'm seeing this extreme comparison of one's life to somebody else really plays into some of this as well. Now, I'm not saying it's solely that, it's usually a combination, but this comparison aspect in this digital world really plays into lowering people's self-esteem, self-confidence, self-image. And when you have lower self-esteem, low confidence, low self-image, as tough as it is. But then when you go on social media or every time you see somebody or every time you turn on the TV, watch YouTube, do anything at all, and you're seeing somebody else who you perceive to be living better than you, man, that makes you feel even worse. It makes you feel even lower. And when you get stuck in this culture of comparison, even if you do something good, even if something great happens to you in your life, you're always going to feel like it's not enough. Because comparison is the measuring stick in which you're using to measure your happiness. And that's something that is real difficult and it's hard to get out of, right? It's hard. I mean, comparison is all around us and it's natural. It's normal to compare. But I think we have to learn to draw a line in the sand. We have to understand that, hey, I can compare myself in some ways, but I have to also understand that comparing combined with a mental health issue, combined with low self-esteem, combined with some other things can really put me in a pretty dark place. And that ever so constant comparison, really a lot of times it leads to this feeling that you're never enough. And I talked to this one person one time who had considered taking their own life, and thankfully they didn't. And they're doing great now. They're doing wonderful. They received help. They're in a really good place. But years ago, they did think about it. And I remember this person told me, now, later on, they said, Scott, during that time, I always felt like I was never enough because it seemed like everybody else was so much better than me. Now, the key word here is that this person said, it seemed like everyone was so much better than me. Now, this person was making an assumption based off of things that they didn't really know, but this assumption then turned into their reality. all because of comparison, which led to them feeling like they weren't enough. And that's why we have to really make sure that we learn to celebrate those who are and what they're doing, but also learn to celebrate ourselves, and also understand that if someone else has a celebration time and maybe we don't right now, that doesn't mean that we're not as good. That doesn't mean that we'll never have another good time. And it doesn't mean that we're not enough. It just maybe means we're in a different place in our life right now. And that's okay. So that's one of the first things that I wanted to talk about today, was really comparison. And understanding the dangers of it too. And to kind of piggyback off of that and go a little bit along with that, I want to talk about self-worth as well. Because a lot of times when I've heard different stories about suicide ideation and people who felt like they were in that dark place, they felt like they had no self-worth, like they didn't matter, like nothing that they would do would matter, and if they weren't here, who cares? Like that's what the mindset was a lot of times for some people who have been struggling in that headspace and who have been dealing with suicide ideation. Self-worth. I'm not enough. I don't matter. Now, these things are just eat away at your soul over time. And a lot of times people don't always understand that. They don't always understand that when you feel like you don't matter for years on end, it weighs on you heavy. And it weighs on you heavy to the point where it kind of poisons every single thought that you have. And it poisons every single thing that you do. And you see that happen to you, and it's a scary feeling. And I think what happens is when people get into that really low place, they don't want to die, but they want that pain to stop. They want that feeling to stop. They want those negative, horrible thoughts to stop. And sometimes they feel like that's their only way out. Now, we know that's not the case. And for anyone who's struggling right now, you need to know that that isn't your only way out. There is help. There are people who are available. And we want to make sure that we get the help that we need before we get ourselves into that dark place in which we think there is no way out. And one of the ways that we do that is realizing that, no, we do matter. We do have people in our lives who care, and that we do have a purpose to be here. And if you're a listener right now, and maybe if you're struggling or you know someone who's struggling, I want you to start making a list of some of those things. Now, you may say, Scott, I don't want to do that. It's like a teacher telling me to do an assignment. No. Make a list of some of the reasons why you do matter, some of the reasons why you're important to other people, why you're important to your job, important in this life, why you have things that no one else can take away, that no one else can give this world besides you. Make a list of some of those good things to start building up your feeling of self-worth. Because you are enough. You do matter. And no matter what it is that you're dealing with in this life, you have to know that. So that if you get to that dark place, if you fall down into that dark place, if you're struggling or you know someone who is, you could turn to that list and you could share that with them. And you could share that with yourself so that you understand, I have reasons to be here. I am worthy. I am enough. Now, I'm not saying that is going to take all your problems away, but it's something that's really good to have in your back pocket so that when you're in that low point, it can give you a little bit of that hope and a little bit of that reason to get out of that place and to seek that help that you need, whatever it is that looks like for you. So one of the last things I want to talk about before we go to our commercial soon is I want to talk about core beliefs very quickly here. And I think core beliefs I've talked about on this show a lot, but it is so important because the core beliefs that we have in our lives, they shape every decision and every thought that we do based off of how we think about ourselves, the world, other people. And a dangerous core belief is like a sickness that spreads throughout your life. Because this core belief at first, it only affects you and how you see people, but then that core belief will start to affect the actions that you take. Then that core belief will start to affect different avenues and other people in your life too. And sometimes that dangerous core belief that you're nothing, can convince you to fall into a place where you feel like contemplating taking your own life. And we want to make sure that doesn't happen, that we don't get there. And one of the ways that we can build ourselves up before we get to that spot is changing some of those core beliefs. Now, understand, that's a process. You don't wake up one day and say, I'm changing every core belief I have to a positive, good one. Well, no, it takes time, but if you're aware of it, that's the first step. Like so many of the things that I talk about on the show, being aware is the beginning and first step before anything else. And one of the ways we go about changing that core belief is learning to identify when we start speaking to ourselves in a detrimental way. So let's say you're walking down the street and you have a core belief that everybody thinks you're ugly. Okay, let's just use that as an example here. And let's say you're walking down the street and people aren't even looking at you, but you're saying to yourself, I know they all think that I'm ugly. I know they're all laughing at me because I know that I'm ugly. If that starts happening, we want to stop. We want to stop ourselves and say, wait a minute. That person right there, they're not even looking at me. They don't even know me. They're not even talking about me. They're not even in my direction. I don't know what they're thinking. So why am I going to convince myself that I'm ugly in this case when there's no evidence from those people to support that? And what you just did right there is by stopping yourself, making those little adjustments, making that little kind of questionnaire in your head, you've become aware that that core belief and what it is right there. And that is the beginning process to starting to change some of that, to realize, okay, there's no evidence to support this, so I'm not going to let these thoughts bully me all over the place. That's how we begin to change some of those core beliefs. So everybody, we've got so much more to talk about here for this week. Like I said, this is National Suicide Prevention Week. It's wrapping up this week. It's such an important topic. So we're talking about suicide. We're talking about some of the things that might lead up to it and all things just mental health and inspiration as well. So stay with us. We'll be right back after these quick commercial breaks.
Hey everyone, Eric Katz here, the owner of Katz Dogs Canine. Are you working from home and need to get your dog out running around for the day? Will you be traveling this summer and looking for a place to board your pup? Is your dog looking a little shaggy and need a haircut or bath? Are you looking forward to walking around and enjoying this beautiful weather, but you can't because your dog's pulling like a freight train? Well, you're in luck. We are a one-stop shop that focuses on daycare, boarding, grooming, and training. We are located at 35 Middle Road, Percy, PA on 10 beautiful acres. You can check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Katz Dogs Canine or our website, katzdogscanine.com. Our phone number is 855-KATZ-DOG, 855-528-9364.
What's going on, everyone? This is Scott Prendergast here, aka Scotty P. Real quick, I want to talk to you about my business. It's called Scotty P Inspiration. And what I am is I'm an inspirational speaker, and I want to help others navigate life through the lens of hope. Now, I do this through speaking engagements, but also one-on-one life coaching. So if you're interested in booking me or doing some of that coaching, let me know. Check me out at www.scottypinspiration.com or check out my Instagram at scottyp_inspo. Find Yourself Boxes was created to foster the connection between a person and those in life who may be working through mental health challenges by providing curated and customizable boxes filled with research-backed wellness products that promote healing. Coupling personal experience with professional mental health guidance, Find Yourself Boxes meets people where they are on their journey. Wellness doesn't look the same for every person, and these products are packaged together to touch various aspects of our wellness spectrum. Find your healing with Find Yourself Boxes at findyourselfboxes.com, and you can get 20% off your first purchase. Welcome back, everybody, to the Friday. Welcome back on this Friday to the Scotty P Inspiration Show. Thank you for listening today. Thank you for being here today. We got some really good stuff for you to be taking with you starting your weekend on this Friday. So everybody, in case you are unaware, I am Scott Prendergast, aka Scotty P, and I'm your host. And today we are talking about Suicide Prevention Week. Okay, and we're talking about, we gave some facts about suicide. We're talking about some of the signs and symptoms. And we're also talking about why this is such a big thing in our society right now and why people are getting to that place and what's going on and how we can help ourselves and others to kind of get out of that place and to seek the help that we need. So without further ado, we've got some time here. We want to jump into it. I want to take you to the next part of what I have planned for this show today. And the next part I really want to talk about is what needs to change. You know, like anything in life, when there is a problem, such as there is a problem in this country, in this world, with suicide right now. These numbers are skyrocketing every single year. So what needs to change? What are we going to be able to do to change that? There are a lot of different things that have to change, obviously, but what can we do? I think one of the first things before anything else is make it a space in which we could talk about this. Make every space that we're in a space where we could talk about this openly and comfortably. I think when we do this, it's almost kind of in a way that you're giving somebody else permission to acknowledge their own feelings. That's kind of how I look at it, right? Because a lot of times somebody might be dealing with thoughts of suicide or be in a really dark place with depression and contemplating taking their own lives. But when no one else is talking about these things, they feel like they're alone. But if we share, hey, I've had feelings like that myself, or I know, talking about this is okay, and creating that space, it's like you're lifting 1,000,000 pounds of pressure off of that person's shoulder and giving them the validation that they so desperately need to seek the help that they need to talk about it. So before anything else, what needs to change? We just need to talk about this in more areas and in more ways. And realizing by talking about it, it doesn't make people do it. Talking about it doesn't give people ideas about doing it to themselves. I could tell you there is no research to support that. And I've looked at it extensively and worked with organizations who have also done official research. Actually, the research shows that by talking about suicide, it helps people to realize they're not alone and they're more likely to seek out help, rather than just keeping it inside, assuming that it will give people ideas, because that is not true, and there's no research to back it. And so I wanted to make sure that everybody understands that. So what needs to change? In addition to talking about it, there are some other things too. We need to make sure that we're doing a better job of recognizing the symptoms, both in ourselves and also in other people too. Now, the symptoms obviously look a little bit different for everybody, but in general, when we're seeing somebody who has lost all interest in activities, who starts giving away some of their most prized possessions, who starts talking, whether in a humorous way or in a serious way, about what the world would be like without them, somebody who is talking about saying, what's the point? I don't matter anyways. People who are saying nobody loves me, nobody cares about me, even saying these things a few times should really trigger a warning flag for us, either in ourselves or somebody else, because it shows that something is going on there. And we want to listen for these types of conversations, because so many times people will say these things because they're hurting on the inside and in some way looking for help. And subconsciously, by sharing a thought about that, even if it might be in a low-key or humorous way, that person's really looking for some type of help in some way. So I think if we can learn to see some of those symptoms a little bit more and take action on it, it'll really help us or the people who are struggling as well. And just opening up that conversation is so incredibly, incredibly, incredibly essential for us to do. I wrote something down here as we're going through the show. We have a few minutes left that I think is extremely important to understand for everybody, whether you're in a dark place right now or not. And what I wrote down is this: you never want to make a permanent decision based off of a temporary feeling. I'll say that again. You don't want to make a permanent decision based off a temporary feeling. This right here says it all. Because when we find ourselves struggling, when we find ourselves feeling hopeless, feeling worthless, feeling like we're not enough, feeling like we don't matter, we have to understand that that's temporary. That's a feeling, and feelings come and go and they pass. And a lot of times when somebody's in a dark place, and if they contemplate or do attempt to take their life, they feel like those feelings will always be there forever. And what we need to understand is that when you attempt to take your own life, and if you do take your own life, that is a permanent decision. That is not something that can be taken back. And we don't want to make a permanent decision based off of feelings that are temporary. Now, I had somebody that I knew once who I talked to who this person did attempt to take their own life. I met this person at a conference, and when I was talking to them, they did survive, and they said, hey, the first thing I thought the second that I did it, I thought, I want to go back. I don't want to do this. The second that they attempted to take their life, they thought, I made a mistake. And this person survived and they got a second chance, but not everybody is so lucky. And we really need to understand that when these feelings come, and trust me, I know how dark they can be. I know what it's like to be in that dark place where you just would give anything for that pain to stop. I know what that feels like. I could speak from experience. But I also know what it feels like to wake up that next morning being so thankful that you have the life that you have. And I also know what it feels like to feel joy again after a dark place. And I know what it feels like to see happiness come into your life again when you thought it never would. Now, I know what that feels like, as many others do too. And that's an amazing feeling. And that's something that we really need to understand, is that these feelings that aren't so amazing, they're not forever. They are not a life sentence. Things do get better. Things do change. Does it take some time? Yeah. Does it take some work? You better believe it. But it does get better. It does change for us. And if there's one thing that I want everybody to take away from the show today, it is that right there, that things do get better. Feelings don't last forever. And we don't want to make a permanent decision off of a temporary feeling, just like I said. I really hope that you could take that away from this too. Kind of to go off of this, I was writing something down, as I usually do when I get ideas and inspiration. And I kind of thought about it like this. I think in our minds, I was looking at it kind of like a room. So I was imagining a bedroom, okay? That's like our mind. And we're in the bedroom, we're cleaning stuff up. But when you're really struggling in a really dark place, it seems like there's this shadowy figure in the corner. And this shadowy figure is just barking out orders all the time. Do this, do that. You can't do this, you can't do that. Who do you think you are? And this shadowy figure just completely controls us and keeps us in a miserable, dark place. And we keep listening to the shadowy figure and taking orders from it. And I was thinking about this mental picture, and I was picturing all of this, and I said, we are so afraid of that little shadow in the corner because we don't get close to it. But if we were to get close to it, we would realize that it's not an entity at all. It's just this tiny little thing in the corner trying to act big, and it's all bark and no bite. But the only way that we realize that is when we get to the point where we stop taking orders from those shadows in the corner of our mind and go right up to them and address them and call them out for what they are. That's how we beat them. That's how we get to the point where we don't let those thoughts come in and completely bully us anymore. And we don't take those orders anymore. We go through it, we address it, and we say, I'm not dancing by you anymore. I'm not afraid of you anymore. I am standing up to you. Just like you would a bully, we're doing it to that bully in our mind. So everybody, we've got a little bit of time left on the show here. We're just about to wrap things up. I want to kind of leave you with this. I want you to know that on this National Suicide Prevention Week, that there is hope available. And that there is help available too. Hope comes in different shapes, forms, sizes for everybody, as does hope. But what you need to understand is that those feelings that you might be having right now, or that your friend might be having, they won't last forever. And better days are on the way. Better days are on the horizon. And this life will change for you, and you will see happiness again. But make sure that we're seeking that help before anything else, for ourselves and for our friends, for anyone who's struggling. So I want to thank you all for listening again. Have a great weekend. This is Scotty P signing off.